Welcome to Breaking Barriers. You know your path. We know the obstacles, and we can teach you how to tear them down. And now your host, CEO and founder of Adapting Social, John Vigero.
All right, guys, welcome back to Breaking Barriers. I'm really excited. So I met you then. Did we ever meet in person or was it phone? I'm brainwashed.
I was joking around with Rob. You know, we met, I don't know the exact year.
Was it
but I wanna say
2017?
7 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 2017, 2016.
Yep, trying to come down at a Red Bank. You were in Red Bank at the time.
Yeah.
Looking at space we had on Arnold Ave, which is maybe a half a mile from here.
Right.
Then you landed here. Mm-hmm. And then it took you 7 years to get me on your podcast. I don't know what happened.
7, we made it.
And I'm right in between. So, it's great. I mean, it's great to see. It's been a long time, but
dude, yeah, things
have been
great.
Wild for those last 7 years, up and down, and everything in between.
Yeah. So, like I said to you prior to jumping on here, like we had a lot of our listeners, essentially email in and just ask, like, "Yo, what's going on with the commercial game?" Right? A lot of them are from different metro cities, some are from suburbs, and so I wanted to have obviously a local expert on. So, what are you seeing? So, obviously, first, before we even dive into that, talk to us about Coletta. What was the start? Was the origins? 15 years.
Sure.
Right?
15 years this year.
Congrats on that, man. That's a big deal.
You. Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long
feels
time.
Feels longer. And also feels shorter. I remember the day we started on 35 North in a, call it 12 by 15 room with 2 desks and a phone.
What town was that in?
Point Beach, right up the
street.
Oh, right?
Yeah,
right up the street. We went from one side of 35 to the other, but 15 years ago. I mean, my father's been in some facet of real estate his entire life since the mid 70s.
Oh wow! Was he on residential side first?
Residential, mortgages, commercial.
Got it.
Prior to us going out on our own, he was a GM for a multi-office affiliate, so for a Coldwell Banker affiliate.
Got it.
That was 13 years or so. Growing it from a couple offices to, I think it ended up 8 offices before I ended up leaving there. And then 2009 was pretty much terrible for everyone. And I had got out of school in 2007.
Where'd you go?
Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania. And I had my license. I was working at that Coldwell Banker in their commercial division. And I just was like, if I'm doing this, like I'm doing it for myself. It just wasn't the owner there or anything specific. Just I'm not sure that a larger affiliate is producing anything for me that is of value, right? So we basically went out then in the worst market ever, and getting business in 9, 10, 11 is like pulling teeth.
Dude,
it was definitely
tough.
Oh,
that's when I started too. I started 08.
Yeah.
So we're
tough.
Close.
And it was, and even today's market is tough in a whole different realm. But that was like, getting started, which was, for me, my father had been in the business a long time, but he was kind of in a lot of different facets of the business.
Right.
And I strictly wanted to focus on commercial. And I just was basically building it from the ground up.
Why commercial for you, though? What's so interesting to me about that is, like, I feel like there's such a bigger market in residential, in theory.
Yeah, I mean.
So what made you say commercial?
Ultimately, I'm just, I'm a... best way to describe it, say I definitely have a higher risk tolerance. I'm a more numbers-oriented person, and
more analytical.
And I just love like the idea of real estate investment in general, and commercial brokerage kind of is like the leap pad for that. Is like you start a brokerage, and then you can source a lot of deals and kind of find your way into what it is you want to do. Not that residential can't be a good investment; it can.
Right.
But between that, starting a family, not wanting to be dragging all over 2 counties, showing houses on the weekends. Like, I certainly work on the weekends if I need to, but it's less common in our business. Yeah.
I also think just knowing both sides, because obviously, like we for both commercial and obviously residential, we work with a lot of agents throughout the U.S., UK, and Canada. And one of the things I noticed though is that it's a different market when you're dealing with a homeowner versus a business owner, right?
Yes and no.
So, what I mean by that is obviously a business owner, obviously in some cases, obviously they can be crazy and whatever else. But with residential, I think expectations as a business owner versus residential, at least from what I heard, you probably obviously have more experience than I do. I'm just saying what I hear are like, homeowners are they can be a bit more emotional and crazy than a business owner. Obviously that varies.
And my answer stays the same, yes and no.
Yeah,
for sure. Like, yes, that typically typically you see that, right? You have
Yeah.
homeowners that are tied to the residence, the family residence, it got passed down, they've lived there
Right.
for 35 years,
Right.
home buyers that want specific things and can't find it, sure. But on the flip side, you do have a lot of smaller mom and pop, we call them, type investors that either
Right.
inherited something or bought
Yeah.
something a long time ago, they have no debt on it. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
this got passed down in our family, we're fighting over it with 3 siblings, what should we do? Or, you know, I don't want to sell this, or I think it's worth $5 million and it's worth $2 million. It's kind of the same, I don't want to say attitude, the same tone.
Do you live in that world a
but
lot,
different-
though?
Well, yeah, especially the market that we're in, right? Like,
Right.
this is not a dense city type atmosphere, right?
Right.
We're living in selling buildings on Arnold Ave and Main Street, Manasquan, and Main Street and Belmar, and a lot of those are buildings that haven't changed hands for a long period of time because they've just
Right.
been passed down
Right.
in generation to generation.
Yeah.
And then you run into situations where they either need the money or they inherit it, and the siblings are out of state and they don't want to handle management of it anymore, or whatever it might be. But you still have some of those same conversations. They're just like, they just have different detail to them, but it's the same thing.
Right.
So it can be interesting, but I guess where you're probably hearing that from is, like the largest transactions I've ever done are the I don't want to say the smoothest, but like they go a little bit easier because everyone is on the same page.
Right.
They're seasoned. They've done them before.
Right.
They have every part of their, what I would call their supply chain lined up. They have an attorney they've done business with for a long period of time, a title company, an environmental company.
Right.
They do all of those things. So at the end of the day, everyone knows what has to get done from signing the contract to closing day. Whereas, the first time investment property seller that bought something or inherited it, is sitting there saying the same thing as the home buyers or home sellers are.
Right.
We've never done this before. What do you mean there's an environmental problem? I've owned this for 40 years. There's an environmental problem. We now have to go through that process. This is the process. So it's interesting, but it is always different, right? And commercial real estate is very broad. I mean, you can go
Is getting the license the same thing as residential?
Yeah, that's a whole conversation.
Is it?
I mean, it's the same exact license, and there's a large contingency of people on both sides that would say it should be different.
Right.
Because they really have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
I shouldn't be selling houses, and
Right.
Ron, the
Vice
residential
versa.
guy, should not be selling commercial properties.
Right.
So, I mean, I've built really good relationship with friends and colleagues that are on the other side, and we have great referral networks. So
Good.
I don't have issues with that, but we do run into it in business all the time. And it makes for headaches, but that's part of the business.
Well, you'll see like a especially like in the earlier years of a new residential agent, they'll always like just know somebody who has like one commercial space or something and they sell it.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there forever vacant because like they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
With commercial side.
It happens. And look, everyone has the right to do business, and if that person, seller, landlord, is comfortable with that person, then that's fine. And I know a good handful of residential / commercial agents that do both sides and do it very well. But it's just not easy to, it's not easy to do it.
Right.
So it's definitely one of those things that I've said, and I know a number of my colleagues have the same thing. Like, why isn't this a separate license? And look, if you want to obtain both, you can. You just have to go through both pieces of education, and testing, et cetera.
Yeah. So I have a question though. So with downtown, right? So I remember, I don't know, I heard rumblings and whisperings of like obviously the time when the I don't know if it's leadership in Point at the time, and mayor or whatever, but I was told, because at one point I was looking at that Manasquan building, right? And so I liked it. I had some conversations, right, around just people who knew about it and stuff. So I never went directly to the actual seller. But somebody was like, yeah, they won't sell it to you. And I'm like, why?
Which Manasquan building? I'm sorry, Jog.
On Arnold Ave.
Oh, the Point Beach one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're not selling that to just anybody. Like, it has to be a specific buyer. Is that, I mean, from what you've heard, is that accurate?
I think it can be in some cases. In that case specifically,
it's like very selective, I guess.
In that case specifically, I think most of it, more often than not, is just about timing. Like, they're just not ready to sell.
Are you listening as Diane Turton?
I have done leasing for them, and I still am. There's a space that we're leasing now,
Got it. Okay.
So a lot of it's timing, right? Like, listen, I'm whatever it is, 50 years old, and I want to keep cash flowing this thing until I'm ready, or we have a family situation with a trust in place, like I'm leaving it to my kids, like talk to them in 10 years or whatever it might be. So more often than not, it's timing. But there are a lot of people that don't sell.
They just leave it.
They keep it forever, and they just keep leveraging, and they leave it to their kids, family members, whatever it might be. But that being said, I've had number of people over the years that have told me they won't sell, and then have called me and sold, and like things change.
Well, hopefully that's the case with our guy over there.
Yeah, you never know, right? Like it could be anything. You could die and leave it to someone they don't want it. They could get sick. They could get relocated for work. They could get divorced. They have to sell it. There's a number of reasons, why things happen. So, that's just part of what we do, and it's real estate. I always say is like it's a long-term game. Everyone knows that. You build relationships, and sometimes you don't see actual monetary reward for your relationship building for years.
I've been there,
and that's what's so rewarding and so hard about this business at the same time. You could start at, as I did, at the age of 22. And not see anything for a long period of time. And those relationships, they take time. They take time to mature, for people to get to know who you are, what your business practices are, all of those things.
Patience is important.
It's super important. And it's, if you have good business practices and you're hardworking and you're a good relationship builder and you do the right things, ultimately, long term, that's like being ethical and going about it the right way is the greediest thing you can do on a long-term time horizon, right? On a short-term time horizon, that never works. And that's kind of the dichotomy you see in a lot of sales. It's like, I need to make money now, or I need to make money later.
Quick sale.
It is what it is. So, it takes a long time. It took us a long time, in 2009, in basically the worst market I've ever experienced, and a lot of people had experienced. We're trying to build relationships, and we did. But a lot of them didn't pay until 2013, 14, 15, today. And that's just the nature of what it is.
Yeah. I said you said something pretty profound, though. I think the issue with a lot of the younger generations, like millennial, like late millennials or like recent millennials, and then Gen Zs right now, is that they don't have that patience for a long relationship build, like you just shared. And you said maturing that relationship. And it's funny because I remember, when I started adapting, I was 17 and I was young, and everyone knew I was young. So I'd be at networking events and be like, this kid's a fucking little kid. What is he doing here? Right. But, I look at like you guys, and I look at obviously us, and, you guys, like, when I look at real estate just in general, everybody in the game right now is being, has the big bad competition of like these other huge firms that have all this tech and all this different things and stuff, right? And I've said to different people, that I've mentored over the years, where I'm like, listen, you have to be in the game long term, and you can't shy away from it. You can't leave because it's getting tough, or because you're making these deals and they're happening right away. Because if you're in it long enough, eventually people know you. Right. And I think that's such a good thing with Coletta as an example, right? Because at the end of the day, there are all these major, huge companies, CBRE, I don't know if that's saying right, Sitar, whatever, that put a lot of money into marketing, a lot of money into tech, a lot of money into all these different things. And you guys obviously are a smaller firm, but people stick with you guys because they know you have those relationships since 2009, right? Or on. And I think that's the one thing that's an issue with, like, you do have kids?
I do.
Right. Yeah. So, with our kids' generation on, and even a current millennial and Gen Z, because at the end of the day, they want that instant, like, oh, I went to this networking event, I didn't make any sales from it, or I'm meeting people, I took this guy to lunch, and I fucking spent $50 and I didn't get no deals from this guy. And to your point, and to my point, even me, like, again, we work with, a lot of great people, because I've been doing this since 2008, and I've been talking about it since 2008, and I've been meeting people since 2008. And to your point, I'll never forget this. Literally last year, it was my longest reigning. So I joke with my sales team. It was my longest reigning, like how long it took me to close a deal. I literally met this guy, no joke, in 2009. Here and there, he hit me up on social. What's up? How are you? How's it going? Whatever. Blah, blah. Always still kept, seeing how he's doing, whatever. Went to his events and stuff. Fast forward from 2009, I met this guy. I've been staying in his circle. Literally, here we are in 2024, and we just started working together. And most people won't be that patient, to your point. So I just wanted to give you that credit, and I want people listening to that to understand that difference is that, like, you have to, if you're invested in what you're doing and you don't have any plans to leave, like, and you really love it, like, you have to know that it's not going to take 2 seconds for somebody to trust you enough to give you a referral or to give you their business. And I think that's a really important thing to know.
Yeah, two things to kind of unpack with that is, one, like tech, right? Technology is growing obviously at a rapid pace, and it's only going to increase in
insane
speed, right?
pace.
And it's not going to slow down. And
no,
really what that has provided is like the access to information is instantaneous and everyone can get it, right? So like not only can you get it right now, but like all three of us can get access right now in the same room within 5 seconds to whatever it is that we want access to.
Yeah.
And so what that means in the game of real estate or in any other sector for that matter is, okay, now anyone out there that is a potential client of mine has access to the same information that I do, right? Like all of the brokers that I do business with, compete against, whatever, we all have the same technology, every single one of them. So to say that anyone does anything any differently is not a flat out lie. There's definitely different things, but
it's hype.
It's getting back to the point of like it is relationships and it's a network.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing standing and always will be the last thing standing in real estate. And I do believe there's going to be like a squeeze of brokerages for sure.
With this NAR stuff?
A cleansing or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Where, look, at the end of the day, everyone can find the house that they want or the building that they want and contact the owner and go talk to them if they spend the time, energy, and money to go do that. Not everyone will.
Right.
Some people always want to use a broker.
Right.
But they have that ability.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the difference is I know you, and I know Rob, and you don't know Rob. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Right.
And so you don't know Rob, and I know Rob, and he has a building that you want that you don't know about. Like I make that connection through my network.
Correct.
That's the only value that is really left.
Right.
It's seriously
right.
like
it's
that's what
I
mean. That's what I believe. There's other people that will disagree with me, but that's what I believe. I think that is the true value left in real estate is who you know and what they have,
connections,
and connecting those two people,
you
know, correctly in a timely manner, and then doing the rest of the deal, which is negotiating it, making sure you can come to an agreement, right? So I do think that happens. The other side, what you're talking about with like immediate instant gratification, just investing in general, like the notion of like always just having to do something and always having to get a result, response, reward, whatever it might be, is like really crazy. And I just, in real estate as well, like if you are patient and you find the right deals at the right time, you know, depending on what your life goals are, et cetera, you can set yourself up really well with 2 or 3 timely transactions or trades in any business, right? Like, so the point is not doing anything is also like a perfect position to be in for a while.
Right.
As long as you understand that like when you should be doing something, you do it. And when you shouldn't be doing something, you're not doing it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people in the younger generation have that same, don't have that same philosophy, have that issue where they don't understand that like you don't have to be buying stocks every day on Robinhood.
Dude.
You don't have to be selling them every day on Robinhood. Like you can actually just sit and not do anything for 6 months and then make one trade and make all of your money.
Right.
Or you could wait 4 years in real estate, but then find that distressed asset that is going to be worth 5 times the amount in half the time something you buy today is. Right. So like, it's very important. It's not easy to do. It's one of the hardest things to do, which is why people have these conversations around it, right? It's like, it's very hard to sit on your hands, not do anything. Right. And as a business owner, it's a little different than investing in general, right? You have to be doing something because your business needs to continue onwards. You need to create revenue, et cetera. So those two things are super important. It'll be interesting to see what happens, you know, with technology and growth and like how many actual real life jobs get phased out and AI, you know, there's a ton that is kind of at the forefront, all the hype talk right now. Yeah. How close we are to that really taking a large chunk of, you know, real life away from people, I don't know. Yeah. You know, I have no idea. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see.
We're close in a lot of ways, but the one thing though, like just based on our studies and stuff we've done, obviously being a tech company and a marketing company, is right now as an example, like human written content. Let's just talk about blogs, right? Or if you're putting stuff on your website, human written content performs 70% better than AI right now. And Google and major search engines like Bing and Yahoo, they have AI to combat AI. Meaning, so if you just went on and put, hey, write me a commercial real estate to ChatGPT, there's certain things that obviously that creates these prompts that makes them say certain words, whether you're saying it, the language of it. And Google and their deep learning and all these different companies like Bing, they can tell whether it's AI written versus human written.
Yeah.
And so, but they're penalizing people who are leveraging it, because they're saying, okay, from an SEO perspective, back in the day, it was like, hey, write a lot of good blogs, create some video content on YouTube, and blah blah blah. And now, people are creating hundreds of blogs with ChatGPT, and then they're just posting it, right? Which is obviously like, it's tethering, and it's not ethical, right? To search engines, because they're saying you're trying to cheat the system. You're not writing real content, right? You're cheating the system. So anyway, but to your point, or to that thought process, we're pretty far away, because now these companies don't want people to cheat the system, right? So they're making ways to figure out that you're using ChatGPT, right? So putting that aside, though, I want to talk about the investing thing too, though. Like the investing stuff, the one thing that blows my mind and drives me a little crazy is, my brother, right? My brother Tyler is 21 or 22. Is Tyler 22? Yeah. 22, right? And Tyler, as an example, was like, oh, I'm buying, Bitcoin, I'm buying all these different things. Like, he's investing in this shit. I'm like, why? Why are you do you think you're gonna get rich off that? Like, that's what you're doing? Like, even Rob the other day came in, a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, he's gonna start investing my money into Bitcoin. And I'm like, why? Like, ultimately, my concern with how they think, right? So we have to think, like, from our marketing perspective, how we typically over the past 15, 16 years aggregate data on consumers is what are their movements, what makes them tick. And right now it's the impulse, right? So you said we talked about patience with a potential referral system or network, but now when it comes to them actually spending, right, and investing, they want to ride the waves. It's not like, hey, I want to go invest in this building or buy this business or buy this whatever because it's going to take too long to get my money back. They're looking at it like, I'm going to jump into Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever the hell these things are, and that's how I'm going to get rich. When it's like, no, that's not how you're going to get rich. You're getting other people rich right now. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, right? But you said a couple different things before that I think is pretty important to people listening, which are sometimes not doing anything is a move, right? And it's a right move to sit on your hands sometimes. And people who are, again, my brother's 22 years old, right? He's young, does he have a shit ton of money? No. So to think that like you should leverage whatever money, availability and liquidity he has into something like that, or into something that they think is going to get them quick returns, right, is where I see the market has been going, which is scary, right? Because conventionally,
100%.
Your dad and my dad and their parents were very conservative normally, right? I go to this one career. I'm going to make, my steady income. I'm going to get the white picket fence. I'm going to put my kids through college and then I'm going to get the gold watch and retire, right? Yep. And now the world that we live in is I don't want to work 40 hours. I don't want to, spend money on a Vanguard account, or my retirement or 401k as much. And I want to ride those other ways. I'm not saying that's everybody, but that's like, a lot of people that we've interviewed, right? Because we do a lot of different polls to get data, like on focus groups. And, we did this one focus group where we had close to like 30 different Gen Zs in a room. Yeah. Mixed bag of male and female. And like over 80% of that room shared that they would rather invest in something that gives them quicker returns. Yep. So they don't have the long-term sight.
So, yeah, I mean, this conversation's gone in a spot I didn't think it would go, but I'm here for it, so that's cool. I think this is like more of a deeper conversation of just like the history of money in general and money supply. And like as you devaluate a currency, you inherently make younger generations take bigger risks because they can't catch up. And like it's pretty much that simple. Right. You're seeing that for sure because the cost of living in the last 4 years alone, right, with everything that happened is significantly higher. And now you have people that are coming out of college with debt, getting a job that's paying pretty much the same amount that it was 10 years ago, right? And all of their living expenses have doubled, tripled, whatever it might be. Right. So it leads to that, like it essentially leads to speculation and gambling, because that's the only way to kind of at least get back to the baseline where you feel like you have a fair start.
Yeah.
Not saying it's right or wrong.
Right.
I just think that's actually what happens with any currency getting devalued, which is what's happening. So that's part one. On the flip side, like I do think that some of that is like really unorthodox, I guess, but I do think some speculation and gambling is really important because it makes people have conviction in something. Like you actually have to put your money on the line.
You're committed, right? You're putting skin in the game,
like whether you're right or wrong, like, and you might be wrong the first time, the second time, third time, then you might be right, whatever it might be. But it does also lead to a smaller portion of those people becoming more educated because they become convicted in something.
Right.
And there's conviction of like, this guy told me he made millions of dollars, so I'm going to do it. And then there's like, well, I read up on how commercial real estate works and why net leases are important, or why you should have a multi-tenant building instead of a single-tenant building, or whatever it might be. It's not everyone, but a small portion of that population will get ahead because they end up putting the time in.
Right.
And so like I do think that's just what happens, and it's probably best described as just unfortunate because it shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Right.
And it leads to that. And I see the same thing. I like the conversations you hear at the local coffee shop are disturbing at times, like some of the stuff, but like that's what happens. And could they go out and just get a job? Sure. Should they? Sure, probably some combination of the two, but it doesn't mean that they're going to like get ahead and have millions of dollars in 5 years if they're working at minimum wage that can't pay bills. And it's a very deeply rooted issue, and a very complex conversation. Like we're oversimplifying it for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like speculation has always been there and will always be there on every new technology, every new derivative of technology, whatever it might be. It's going to be there. So it's like interesting to see, and it's also interesting to study because like the psychological piece of that you can plug into any industry, right? Like so whether it's real estate or investing in the stock market or whatever you're investing in, it's interesting to see how each generation like soaks it in and processes like information and then makes their decisions. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely vastly different. Like to go back to real estate, I have people that call me, ask for information on property, then come see it, then ask me more questions about the property, then go through their underwriting process, and then I'm now 3-4 weeks into this conversation on the transaction, and then they call me back that they'd like to possibly make an offer. Sorry, it's under contract. John just like came in and just made the offer and figured it out later. And like sometimes John's right, sometimes he's wrong.
Right.
He may or may not be experienced, but like just the decision making process is what I'm highlighting is like way different, right? It's like this is how I've always done it. I owned 100 units, and I go through this process on every one of them. It's like, well, John wants to get to 100 units, and he knows that how to do that is to beat you out of this deal because now he has 4 units.
You got to beat it to win it.
Right. So like, so the decision making process is like completely different.
Right.
And on my side of that, like you also have to understand that and know how to work with both of those clients. They're 2 completely different clients. So
yeah, that's so, dude. It really just makes you think about again what is the economy gonna look like in 30 years?
I have no idea.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
Because before it was a little bit.
I don't know what it's going to look like in 30 days. So like 30 years is like, it's fun to think about.
Yeah. Well, you know what, but realistically, I mean 30 days and even a year seems pretty like predictable based on what we've seen. But I'm saying like when the people who are like your kids and my kids that are like buying houses or like out of college and like in the world and in the political system and whatever, it's like, what is that going to look like? Because these are people again who have grown up. How old are your kids?
10 and 15.
Okay, 10 and 15.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm at the earlier end of that spectrum. So essentially, my son's 15 months old,
okay.
And then I have twins due next Wednesday.
Just starting.
Just starting.
Good luck.
So yeah, so you're out of the weeds already. You're not waking up in the middle of the night anymore with the babies and shit. But my point is, like, at the end of the day, when we get to that point, it's going to be interesting to see just how decisions are made at the high level, right? So, like, when you think back, like, they joke around, back in the day about, like, the red phone in the president's office, mm-hmm. right, with the nuclear codes and the whatever. It's like, it's a very methodical process in big decisions, like stuff like that or whatever, finance, whatever, where now it's so much different with the way that younger generations are thinking.
Not thinking mostly.
Correct, right? Like just impulsive, right? talk to us about, so obviously, like, what are your thoughts on the state of New York? We're talking about New York commercial real estate. Like,
I don't operate there.
I know you don't.
So
I know, just for your opinion, because a lot of people that are asking some questions are saying, what do most commercial people, speculating, of course, it's your opinion, on what's happening in the city?
The only thing I can speculate on, because I hate giving opinions on stuff that I'm just not informed on.
Yeah.
But the bit of research and information that I have taken in is the city itself, I think, will always be revamped as the city in one facet or another.
Yeah.
But I do think there'll be massive growth into other cities in New York, northern, like
Austin, Texas.
Bunch of information and articles coming out on how Buffalo is one of the hottest markets right now.
Really?
In the entire country.
What?
Residentially, but commercial typically, in a cycle, commercial will lag residential. But when you start seeing those developments, and you start seeing larger retailers coming in, like they're doing their homework, right? They're not just putting a 90,000 square foot Home Depot or whatever it might be into a spot saying like, well, I hope one day people come here and buy building products. Like it doesn't work like that. So those cities are definitely growing, and they're growing at a fast pace. And it's not just New York. There's other cities that kind of have been on the fringe of like, are they going to explode or not for years? West Coast of Florida, like Northwest Florida, is growing really, really rapidly right now. And the infrastructure is just not there to support the population growth, whether it's internally people staying there and having families there, or people coming, from other states. Excuse me. And so when the infrastructure is not there, it needs to be, and that just leads to, for the commercial world, it leads to a ton of good opportunity that's super lucrative, but also super risky, because in every cycle, eventually people start spending money and building on spec, and the growth runs out, or the economy slows down, and you get left with unbuilt projects, people upside down in their mortgages, whatever it might be. So it's just a matter of where are we in that cycle, and it's not easy to determine based on all the outside factors we've had in the last few years. Right.
Well, what I've seen though, so like I watched this thing on 60 Minutes about commercial real estate in New York. And essentially what they were saying, a lot of these building owners who have been there, for decades and decades and decades. Like you said, similar to like people who pass it down, and the New York's at a place now where I think they said something like, I could be wrong. Obviously, if we figure this out and I'm wrong, we'll correct it in editing. But I think it's like over 50 or 60% of buildings are vacant in New York right now.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers. I know it was really high
it's like
for a number of years.
Super high, like actively right now. And apparently it's getting worse. And that's why like a lot of these huge companies like JP Morgan and, those types of businesses at corporate level like that are trying to force people back into the offices. But the issue is people are quitting jobs that are huge, high paying salaries, taking even less than half in some cases, to stay working from home and to be close to their home or be in that type of environment. But it's because they have these crazy leases in the city still that nobody's in the building, right? And so you're paying this money technically, and it's not being utilized. And so the issue that I saw in 60 Minutes that like a lot of these developers are going through is they have $250 million loans that they're defaulting on because people are not paying rent and people are not paying, the leases and stuff. Yeah. And so this one guy said, I forget his name, but he said essentially like, I can't even convert my building into residential based on the codes and whatever. He would have to knock the building down. And he's like, I can't knock in this building down. Yeah. So, but what they were saying is that essentially because more people like New York, I have a lot of clients that are restaurants that are closing because like they're just not busy enough. People are not partying in the city or in the city all week long, getting lunch, doing whatever they used to do. And so the economical impact of the city as itself is people are not coming into offices. They're not spending money during the week, which means that these small businesses all around the city are not making that money. And the weekends are not even as as a vibe as it used to be. And so, it all stems from the fact that they're not going into work, so they're not spending money. And then when you think about all that, so they're losing tax revenue. They're losing all these extra things as a city. And so from a commercial perspective, if you were in the city, if you were a commercial agent in the city and owned Coletta in New York City, what would you do?
I would be diversifying out of the city.
Right. So
I probably said that really low, but no, I mean,
But what does that look like? So if you were to diversify,
so like it's really interesting. Like Class A real estate, or just call it like great real estate, location, right, will always be repurposed for something else.
Right.
It just, I mean, I've have a building locally here that I've sold a number of times to different clients, and it's gone from Blockbuster to an attorney's office to now Hackensack Meridian Health.
Right.
So like that alone will tell you, like, if the real estate is located correctly.
Is that the one on Arnold?
No, that's right on Route 35 here.
Okay.
Right around the corner. So, it will get repurposed. It's just a matter of, like, it happens all the time. Like, you people get, and I say people, but really what we're talking about most of the time is, like, institutional money. Like, they get caught in, like, just over leveraging. And then, like, we want to create a situation where it's, hey, this is the reason it's happening and it's not fair. Like, the tenant's not paying the rent. It's like, well,
right.
Like, you over leverage yourself. There's plenty of people that are doing just fine, sitting on their hands on a pile of cash right now that aren't over levered, and they're going to be the ones to buy a lot of this stuff back up.
Do you think the market's going to go back to a point like that?
I don't think I don't think it's as so. I think we always paint commercial with, like, a broad stroke of, like, commercial, and I think a lot of, like, the doomsday debt restructuring scenarios that you're hearing about right now are, like, very, very isolated to large city office. And that is 100% happening. But meanwhile, good old Point Pleasant, Northern Ocean County, Southern Monmouth County, I mean, rents have more than doubled since I started in business here.
Wow. So it's still actively.
So, like, all the people that can't eat in the city anymore and are staying at home, well, they're staying at home. They're not taking the train into the city and working.
Yep.
They're staying at home. So they're going to eat in downtown Manasquan at the Committed Pig. They're going to eat at wherever it might be, right? So, like, people still have to consume. It's just where they're consuming. It's not like, and we're obviously a nation of consumption. Like, we're not slowing down on that. I don't have the data in front of me. I'm sure you have more than I do. So it's just a matter of, like, okay, I'm staying at home. I can work from home. Right. Now, like, I can eat locally instead of having to eat where I work because I now work here. So, like, there's a lot that goes on. I think the overall market is, like, it's really hard to tell if and when anything might fall out. Like, we're in an election year, which always gets wonky. People technically.
Dude. And this is a fucking nuts one.
It's just going to be interesting. Like, I would rule nothing out. And, most smart investors that I deal with, really, they sit on their hands through these periods to kind of figure out what goes on. There's no reason to do anything knee-jerk prior or directly thereafter. Just kind of let everything play out because we're coming out of a weird enough time in the last 3 years. Let's see what happens and then adjust accordingly. Like, you don't always have to be doing something. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know rates are higher, but they're not really that high historically. If you look at historical rates, like, most people tie to residential. So even if we went that route, and I'm not a residential agent, we talked about this earlier, but obviously I'm in tune with, like, the local market and what's going on. They're, like, historically average, pretty close, right? And what happened was an overly aggressive appreciation followed by an overly aggressive rate hike, right? So you went from getting a 3% mortgage to 6.5% mortgage in something like 6 months, which is, like, crazy, right? So it all of a sudden seems unaffordable, but, like, historically, rates have been much higher at times.
They have. It's so funny. I was at a what the hell was it? I think it was like a communion or baby shower or some shit. Like, when in the heat of this, when the rates were like high, and they peaked out, and this lady sitting next to me, I didn't know her, but she was talking about how, like, she's like, oh, you guys are complaining about the rate. She goes, when I bought my house, my rate was like 18% or some crazy shit, right?
70s, 80s.
Right. It was, like, insane, right? And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. But the difference at that point is, like, you bought a house for $100K, right?
Yeah.
So
40.
So so fuck it. It's 18%. I don't give a shit, right? But now to be
but wages were also, if you're making 6 cents an hour, it's all relative. Right.
It is, to your point, it is relevant. It is relative. But I'm just saying in general, like, but that's how, like, our generation and millennial generation is processing it. Like, you'll see all these videos going viral on TikTok saying, like, oh, my mom's saying this stuff, and but you bought a house for $80K, and a couple almonds, right? Like, now, it's whatever. But all right, few last questions. Are you ready to be put on the spot?
Sure.
No. Twist the T, should I put him on the spot? You ready for this? Should we do it? So, all right. What is your favorite restaurant locally?
Oof. I would have to say I have to give it a tie.
To who? Okay.
I have to give it a tie.
All right, a tie.
Locally, like
I'm saying like dinner.
right
locally, yes.
The Shipwreck Grill and La Mondina.
Okay, I love La Medina. I love Carmine.
Yeah.
So Shipwreck actually surprised me. So, all right, but why for each?
So Shipwreck, a little bit of backstory. When I was getting started in this business, I actually was bartending there for probably the first 5 or 6 years of working. I had my first daughter young, bought a house, started a business. So like I was working every bit I could. So I know it really well in and out. I know the owners from working there. They're great guys. The chef's phenomenal. He puts, after I think he's been open 24 years now, 23 or 24 years now, he's still putting like good new concepts on the plate all the time. And like the only reason I don't like, sorry Terry, the only reason I don't like going there too often is because like there's a lot of clientele there, and same at Mondina, that like I used to wait on, and like I just want to go have dinner with my wife. So I love you all, but like I would like to just have some privacy. So
of course,
that's the only time I don't want to go to either of those two restaurants, because they're both phenomenal. They both have really good food, really good service. And back to the entitlement thing, like the service there isn't quite that. Or a lot of other restaurants you go and it's like, here's your drink, here's your food, give me my 20 or 25%, and like get out so I can get another person sitting here. Yeah. And like I love to go eat out. I love to try new places, and I don't mind spending money doing it. But at the same time, like there's got to be something on the other side that I feel like what I'm spending is worth it. Right. And those two places both do a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those. So I've only been to Shipwreck I think twice, but I love La Medina. I would say it's same for me on that answer. But Shipwreck blew my mind. The first time I went there recently, I got like a fillet. And I believe a lobster tail, and like just the whole dish was fucking amazing. Yeah. And I love atmosphere. Atmosphere points count for me. Like I want to be at a place where like it looks nice, got good vibes, good energy, and like both those places for me hit those marks. Yeah. Me, La Medina more so. So I would say La Medina is number one for me. Now what about, so if you're going out for a drink with your buddies, right, and you're going to a bar, what's your spot?
Ugh. These were not the questions I was expecting.
I know. That's why I had to hit him with them.
So like hyper locally, I go to the Shore House all the time because it's right around the corner from my house. I know Frank. I know you just had
Frank's
him
great.
on.
Yeah, Frank's great.
He's a client of ours. We're hopefully going to grow blended with him really nicely. Yeah. He does a great job there. Like it is what it is. It's like he puts out good bar food, and like same thing. Yeah. The servers and the bartenders there are like attentive. Have good conversation.
I love Shore House.
So I'd say like that's definitely my spot in Point because that's where I live. Yep. But it's fun going around. It's fun like spending a night out in other towns too. Right.
So if you're going outside, are you an Asbury guy, or were you going if you're like going outside and like hyper local?
Yeah, like I'm gonna be 39, so I'm kind of past like the going out for the entire night kind of thing. So like I'm more of like, hey, let's go grab like good food and a cocktail. Yeah. So there's the food and drink scene like has been amazing in the last 15, 20 years in the growth. There's some cool places. Like Grand Tavern's really good. It's like,
dude, I keep hearing that. I need to go there.
Good cocktail. Like I haven't been there in a long time, so it's weird that I'm bringing that up. I'm probably gonna need to go now, but. Like those are the type of places like I like the smaller, cozy atmospheres. Good like thoughtful craft cocktails, because I'm not gonna have 100 of them.
No, right.
If I'm just gonna go have a vodka soda or a beer,
I was gonna say, what's your drink of poison?
You can go anywhere.
What's your drink of choice if you're gonna go?
It just depends. Right. Whatever I'm in the mood for.
But are you more of a beer guy or a liquor guy?
It probably just depends on the season.
So either
I love craft beers. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I go to Last Wave all the time. Yeah. I love Icarus stuff. Thank God, Jason, you're coming to Brick because that place. I don't like going to Lakewood. I love stuff. Right. He's a client of ours. We did that deal with them, and they're very close to opening. I can't wait for it because
you got close. I saw your sign there. You did a deal. Dude,
and everyone you've had on your podcast is like
I know. So they're all your clients.
Steve's opening there. Like dude, we did that deal with Steve. God. Steve's great, by the way. The story I had no idea.
How insane is his story, dude?
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Dude.
I listened to the whole thing.
Most people don't realize.
I had no idea.
I didn't know it either. I came into it. So I'd never been to Burger 25 because I live more north. and my wife's from Tom's River, and so her family still lives in Tom's River.
Yep.
They're frequent flyers there, and like, you have to go there. So finally, bring my son there like a couple months ago, and I was hooked. Like, we literally get it door dashed to fucking Wall. Yeah. Like, and the drivers are always like, you know that this is in Tom's River, right? But I grew up, and I have a rental around the corner in Oak Knoll Drive in Brick.
Okay.
And so I used to live there. And so I said to my mom, because my mom lives around the corner there too. And I'm like, of course, we move. And now fucking Icarus is moving here. Literally, I could ride my bike there from Brick. And then Burger 25 of all places. Yep. That's going to be a crazy combo. Yeah. Like, that was such a good freaking, oh my God, that combination.
It's going to be good. We have one more concept coming in. They're hopefully signed by tomorrow. So
can we know what it is?
Can't know yet, but look at it'll be announced. I'm sure.
Offline, me and Rob are going to tackle Jarrad. We're going to find out.
Yeah. But it's going to be such a great feel there. I mean, it's amazing to see what they've done. It's crazy. It's been 3 years since they bought the property.
Oh my gosh, the building looks dope.
Tons of ups and downs and headaches and DOT and contracting issues and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And Jason's the most even keel guy I've ever met in my life, and he's just plowing through it. And the facility looks amazing.
Right.
So I can't wait to go there and have a beer.
So you're saying so it's going to be Icarus, Burger 25, and one more?
Yeah, Burger 25 there's like 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And they took like 4.
Okay.
It's a little under 6, so they took 4. It's like 1,500 square feet for another.
Wow.
I could tell you it's a food concept, but look for the announcement on that one.
I'm really excited to see that. Yeah. That's really cool. All right, so let's go to the last 2 questions. So, kind of putting you on the spot again, but this is more business and legacy focused.
Sure.
So essentially, a lot of times, we think about like, legacy as like where we are today and like what we're going to leave behind and stuff. So we kind of like to reverse engineer that process and think about like, what's the one thing that's going to supersede you, your kids, their kids, right? And it's technically, in theory, your gravestone, right? Or, if you have a urn and you have a little thing on it, so if you were to, and of course, paraphrasing, if you were to paraphrase what your legacy is going to be left behind, written out on a grave plot, what would that say?
I would say that,
you think about it. There's no rush.
I'm going to think about it.
Yeah, think about it. And while you're mulling it over, I'll give you a little advance notice on the next question. So essentially, I like to ask these questions because when I first got started, I had a lot of different challenges. My parents almost lost their house in 08, 09. And, I was like really looking for some sort of motivation because I didn't have most people would like a security blanket when they're starting a business. Most don't have it. But when I was starting, I was like, what? I need to like get into a mental state where I'm going to be bulletproof through like challenges and these types of things. So I would always ask these questions to people early on about like what motivates you? What's a good quote, that you have or like an adage you've heard? And the one that resonated with me was, live a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can, right? So, it's not taking the easy job or it's, taking the road less traveled and, starting a business or going into a career you love that you're starting and, it's hard, it's challenging, you're not making the money you want to make, but you're building something, right? And a lot of people don't go that route. They go the easier route. Well, I'll just go get a paycheck somewhere else or I'll just, get a job, right? And so, I kind of apply that to everything that I do in my life. Like if I'm trying to get in shape or if I'm like building a new relationship, it's like, it's not going to be perfect in the beginning, right? Like I have to work at it. It's going to be hard. I'm going to get kicked in the nuts a bunch of times. So anyway, giving you some background context.
So inquisitive and exploratory, to fuel growth basically, and storytelling it along the way. I've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like you said, from college onward, I've never had an actual paycheck in my entire life. When I was in high school, I worked construction for a friend's father. So like I definitely learned a lot in that aspect and got paid to do it. But after college, or during college, all the way through, I've never had a paycheck. Right, I've started this business. Bartending is you do well.
Yeah.
And you don't do well. And, if it's
ups and downs, right?
Yeah. If it's a week straight of rain, it's not always the best, for a bar crowd, or sometimes it is the best. And if it's sunny, it's not because they're outside or whatever it might be.
Right.
And like always exploring new ways to either grow my individual business, investments, whatever it might be. And like learning all the time on how to I've definitely been incorrect on investments in general. I've definitely made mistakes and have failed a number of times on a whole bunch of different accounts. But like, you look at those things as learning experiences, and then you kind of grow from there. So like, never being inquisitive and never stop learning, and like that, 10% of those people that I was talking about that are forced to go gamble on something or whatever it might be, but then actually go and take it to another level and start learning about an industry or material or whatever it might be, to then provide something of more value for themselves or their family in the future.
Right.
Is a lot of what I do, and like, it's, I'm always trying to figure out ways to do that. Right now, it's obviously focused towards my business. Trying to figure out ways to do that now with just the current market, climate in general, and then other things in terms of just growth, bringing on new team members, trying to grow into other markets, etc. There's a lot that goes into that. It's not as easy as just popping up an office and doing business, right? So, I've also built a business here locally in a place that I've lived and worked my entire life.
Right.
So relationships are easier. Product knowledge is easier. Like, I understand what these buildings were before anyone else understand, at least over the last 40 plus years.
Right.
If I decide that I want to go plop down in, Toledo, I don't know anything about Toledo. I can't, so there's a learning curve with that, right? Like, it's not as easy to be able to, and not that it's easy to create a business anywhere, but in our business, like, knowing the inventory, knowing the information of the market and the trends of the market is also important on top of the relationships, which you don't have in a new market. So figuring all that out is like super interesting to me. And hopefully we can figure it out correctly and grow the way we want, but time will tell.
So what's your gravestone saying? Saying go to La Mondina.
I would say,
keeping in context, right? Typically it says here, then lie. Obviously you don't say that, but like, father, this or that, like those types of things.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, we didn't even touch on that. I would definitely say father, husband, and I don't know the words I would use for it.
You would spitball
basically
it.
Forever inquisitive. Like, it would just be always looking for the next thing. You just can't stop and slow down. Like, and it could be related to one thing that you're just trying to grow over time repeatedly, or it could be just a new thing. But I'm just always looking for a new challenge, right? Like, you want to figure out how to do take the next step, whether it's, financially, whether it's family, whether it's business oriented, whether it's just learn how to catch bigger fish, like, climb taller rocks, whatever it is you're into. You're kind of always looking for the next thing, because if you're not, you're going backwards. So father, husband, and forever inquisitive.
I think that's great, man. There's no right answer to it, right? So in the future, if your kids, let's just say, for instance, one of your kids is meeting somebody and you're not here anymore, obviously, hopefully far in the future, what would they say? Like, how would they introduce you if they're like, oh, you should have met my dad, he's X? What would they say?
Crazy. But in a good way. Right? Like, our conversations range from everything you could imagine. I try to expose my kids to a broad range of perspectives. Obviously, a lot of what I say, I think they hold closer than other things. But that's why I try to explain both sides or multiple sides of every story point or discussion that we're having. It's hard to get a broad perspective on, or different perspectives on things anymore, without being like, you have to be one or the other.
Right.
And you don't have to be one or the other. I 100% believe that you should understand what each of those things are. Right. All of the points that are trying to be made, left, right, top, bottom, whatever, just understand what they are and be able to think for yourself. It's like the one thing that I always harp on my kids. Think for yourself. Don't regurgitate what people tell you, even myself. Right, like, I'm just as flawed as any other person walking this earth. Right. Sometimes I don't think I am. Sometimes they probably don't think I am. But it is what it is. Like,
depends what craft beer you have.
Depends on where I'm at. But no, it's true, and it's very hard for, especially kids, to think for themselves anymore with technology. Right, like, everything's put in front of them. They're processing things that they probably don't even know they're processing at a speed that's unheard of, and it can be damaging if you don't know how to take the information, that you're receiving and actually think about it.
Right.
If you're just receiving it, it just becomes embedded in you.
Right.
It's easy to just regurgitate information. And sometimes that can be better and sometimes that can be worse.
Right.
But ultimately, if you can slow that process down and kind of unpack it and figure out, okay, this is what I'm being told. This is what I'm being told over here.
Right.
Why does each make sense or not make sense? What do I think? That's very important. And it's hard to do. So I think they would tell you I'm nuts because I probably try to put a life lesson into every single thing, even though they're just trying to play Monopoly with me. Right. But I try to explain those things to them so that they get it, because at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm going to be here until I'm 83 or 43.
Right.
And you don't want to run out of time to explain all the things you want to explain to your kids. Yeah. So hopefully they take what I say seriously. Right. They're great kids. They're polar opposites, and it's fun to watch them grow. So I know you have 2 on the way and a young one, so you've got a lot to go. It's they couldn't be more different and also very similar at the same time. Right.
Their own unique personalities.
Yeah. My youngest is, my wife and I, we call her our free soul. She's probably the only kid I ever knew that could recite every word of every song of the Europe 72 Grateful Dead tour.
Oh, wow.
Just at the age of 6. And then my oldest is actually a musician that she plays. And she's very, very high intensity all the time.
And she's gonna be 16, so you got a permit
She'll
driver
16
coming
at the end of the year. She's already.
You ready for that?
I don't know if I could say this on air, but yeah, she's already asking for the tutorial in the parking lot kind of thing. But yes, I am. I guess I am ready for it. I mean, it's just another step. She's completely. If I was 15 and I could go stand up in front of hundreds of people and play an instrument and sing, I mean, the confidence to do it is it amazes me every time I see it. It's crazy. Yeah. And the best part is I can't coach her because I don't know anything about it. My youngest plays soccer and I can coach. I always want to be fixing and doing. Yeah. My oldest is I'm having a beer and that sounds awesome. I don't know what else to tell you. It's really cool. But she plays locally all the time. Shameless plug at Grace Coletta Music on Instagram.
I was gonna say this is where you plug yourself anyway.
Yeah, you can follow her and see where she's playing. Come check her out. She plays locally. She plays at Shore House. She plays a bunch of other local places. So
good shit.
Yeah, you can come see her anytime.
That's awesome. Yep. And then this is also where you plug yourself. So dude, first and foremost, before you even do that, I'm really grateful for your time. It's the one asset we don't get back. So you spending it here with me today, and and Rob and our listeners means the world to me. I commend you, and your father and everything you guys have done and built up. Obviously, I've heard of you guys since the early days of when I started. Saw your signs everywhere. You guys have obviously built some momentum in your brand over a decade plus. So congrats on that. It's not easy to be in business for 15 years, right? So congrats on that. And so where can people find you guys? Website, socials, whatever.
Yeah, it's ColettaCommercial.com, 1L, 2 T's, Coletta_commercial on Instagram, Jarrad Coletta on LinkedIn, Coletta Commercial on LinkedIn. All of our stuff is there. We're happy to have conversations at any time if you're a seasoned investor, if you're just thinking about it. I mean, people, as we'd already discussed, are constantly thinking of new things and ways to get ahead. If you're thinking about whether it's real estate, whether it's opening a business and not understanding the process of the real estate behind your business, a lease space, whatever it might be more than happy to have those conversations and kind of guide you through it. It's complex, and if you don't do it every day, it seems very, very daunting. But at the end of the day, we're just educators in our field, right? We just explain things to people that don't know what it is.
Yeah. And if people, so for people that don't know this, right? Because people who are early on in investing as well, right? That don't know, if a building is actually shit or whatever, or if they even how to get the financing. You obviously come equipped with, I'm sure, some people
our
you
recommend
is full of, and
cool. Yeah. So we have lenders that we refer to and use. I mean, and everyone that I refer, I use personally. Whether it's business or my personal life. Could be from insurance providers to title insurance providers to environmental companies to commercial lenders. Every one of them are really, really great. We use them ourselves, and you don't have to use them, but they're just there based on our experience.
Yeah.
Like anything else, I would always talk to multiple people. You never know who you're gonna be comfortable with or fine, or where you're gonna save fees. I mean, money is a part of the deal, so sometimes that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy to have a discussion with anyone on any facet of real estate, even if it's just like, hey, what do you think of this?
Right.
Happy to do that.
That's awesome. So guys, give it a check out. Obviously, he told you the links. Go check him out. And Jarrad, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Bam.